Could this be the future of Linux? I really think it could be. This is Fedora Silverblue. Now, why do I say it's the future? Well, a lot of people have said so, and I kind of agree. It uses OS tree. What that is it's an image of your operating system that is read-only. It's called an immutable OS. Basically, your whole OS is untouchable. Now, you still have your home folder, and you can still install packages and whatnot, but the OS itself is locked down. It is an image that you cannot mess with. It can still be upgraded, but it is an atomic upgrade. Here you have, it's broken down into three major pieces here. So here's the OS tree layer, and it has your OS image. This image is the same for me. It's the same for you. Anyone who's installed it uses the same image. So not only is it beneficial for the user, but the developers as well know exactly how your system is laid out because everybody has the exact same thing. Now, what happens when you install packages? Well, you can install packages, it's called a package layer, alongside with the image, and that will go on top as a new layer. You can roll back that image at any time to go back to the original, but packages are a little different, and I'll get into that. So then your OS image gets an upgrade. So the operating system itself has an update, you upgrade it, and it just layers itself on top. You could still roll back if things go wrong or whatever. I'm going to get into all this as well. I'm going to show you when I actually install it, and we'll play around with it a little bit. Then you still have your image version 2 of the OS, and your packages have upgraded. So these are still kind of separate. So now let's say things have gone wrong with the OS, and you need to roll back. When you roll back, your package upgrades stay with your previous layer, if that makes sense. If you were to roll back all the way to the original image, those packages that get upgraded before will also follow back, if that makes sense. So that's part one, and I'll get into this as well, and I'll show you when I'm actually in the operating system. So then how do you install all your stuff? Because this seems a little complicated. Well, this isn't the way you would install regular packages. If you want to install Spotify or Chromium or whatever, you shouldn't really do it this way. This is a last resort because Silverblue also uses Flatpaks. Flatpaks, if you've never used before, are sandboxed little packages that run independently of anything else you have installed on your system. So you can upgrade or downgrade your operating system layers, and it's not going to affect the Flatpaks at all. So this is good because you have this kind of separation between your applications and your OS tree layers. These packages, again, I wouldn't recommend unless you absolutely cannot get the Flatpak for it. Now, the third part, and this is probably more for developers, is the toolboxes. So Fedora has toolboxes that you can create, and it's just a command that you run in the terminal. Again, I'll show you when I'm in the OS. And you can create multiple of these toolboxes. And these toolboxes are containerized OSs. So you could have Fedora 30, Fedora 29, Fedora 28. You can have multiple, like there's two Fedora 30s here. And you can give them all different names, and you can go into them and install whatever you want. There's differences in how you install in a toolbox, though. In the OS itself, there's a command called rpm OS tree that you would use to install things. There is no DNF. In the toolboxes, you can use DNF. Sounds confusing, but it's just the way it works. Imagine this is Silverblue's way of doing things. Then you have the Flatpaks that are completely separate. And then in the toolboxes, there are each their own little Fedora workstation. It's not Silverblue, it's Fedora workstation inside these toolboxes. So if I haven't sufficiently confused you, I'm going to now boot up my machine. And it's an older machine. I have an SSD, but it's not the quickest, but, you know, I'll make it work. And I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of the installation. I'll show you some of the important things, but for the most part, it's the standard Fedora Anaconda installer. So I'm going to skip through and we'll get into the OS itself. All right, so you've got your typical select your language and select your keyboard, just like normal. And then you'll see that your automatic partitioning selected is in red. You got to click on it and you can set it to automatic. If you have free space, if you already have a distro and you have free space and you set it to automatic, it will install itself into that free space and set up Grub to dual boot or multi-boot. I have nothing on this drive, so I'm just going to leave it as automatic and let it have the whole drive. You can also do advanced and manually partition and whatnot, but I'm not going to get into that. The network, you would give it a name. You could leave it the default if you want to, but let's just call it silverblue.local domain. Hit apply, done, begin, and then you're going to set your root password. If it's too short, you get some kind of warnings. You have to click done twice. That's the same in Fedora as well. Let's do Dorian, make me an administrator. Password, again, too short, so done twice. And then I'm going to pause the video, but I just wanted to point out, you can see here, it's writing objects. This is the image that it's writing to the disk, your operating system OS tree image. So I'll pause the video and then I'll keep going when it's done. All right, so that's done, and it took me just under 5 minutes, so I'm going to click reboot. It is a little slow. It's my computer. I will get something better as a test rig, but for now, it does the job. So I'm going to boot back in here up to the login screen, and here we go. So depending on your preferences or what you plan on using, by default it's Wayland, but you can also log in on Xorg. So log in here, and the first thing I want to show you, oh, by the way, it's the GNOME desktop by default. And I will show you, we'll install Cinnamon afterwards. Welcome screen. So, English, no location services, no clouds, start using. And the GNOME help screen. All right. So, now that we've loaded, you might find it a little bit choppy at first. And you can see I'm downloading at 5 to 9 megabits per second because it's checking for updates. So that's why I wanted to bring this up right away. So I'm going to show you the Software Center. Let's go shopping. Remember how I said you install all your stuff Flatpaks? Well, the Software Center does all the Flatpaks, and it actually does it pretty well. You can also do it from the terminal, and I'll get into that after. I just want to get to the updates screen, because for now I'm going to stick to the OS tree layers, and then later on we'll cover the Flatpaks and the toolboxes, and then I'll install Cinnamon just for fun. Okay, so here we are in the Software Center, and we'll click on the Updates tab. It says software is up to date. That's a lie. Let's just do this. So you can see here, looking for new updates, the download speed is quite a bit. I've already downloaded 270 megabytes. While it's looking for updates, it's actually downloading a new image if it finds it. Hopefully they change this in the GNOME software application so that it actually tells you that it's downloading, because you might think, why is it taking so long to look for updates? And also, if you're using a metered connection like a hotspot on your cell phone, you wouldn't know that it's actually downloading hundreds of megabytes right now. All right, so you can see now that it's done, and it has all these updates here. And OS updates, you could double click that and it'll show you stuff that it's removing, all this stuff that it's upgrading. And the button says restart and update. It doesn't say install, because if we go back to my image here, the image has been downloaded. While it was looking for updates, it downloaded the image already. So that part's already done. So basically now, with OS tree, all you're going to do by clicking this button, and it does take a second. If your computer is newer, it won't take as long. If you click the button, now it is staging the next image to be the default boot. So we'll just give it a second here, and it's going to pop up and then ask you to reboot, but I'm going to cancel it. So here we have the restart. If you want to do this in the terminal, you would go terminal, and let's make this readable. Not for me, for you guys, especially people on phones. If we go RPM OS tree status, this is where you will see your various images. Now, I don't know if you can make it out, but there's a little dot here. This is the image that we are running right now, because that's what the dot indicates. And this is what was actually installed. Now, when we just did the update and it was asking to reboot, you could see this ended up on top. If it was an older image, it would be below where the dot is. So when we reboot, you could see difference, 413 packages upgraded, 1 downgraded, 3 removed, 11 added. This is the difference between this image and this image. So you can also do sudo rpm OS tree upgrade. This is how you would do it in the terminal. You can also use this. This is fine. And this kind of makes the usability as a regular workstation kind of possible, because if you don't want to mess with all this stuff, you don't have to. You can just use this and it's fine. So yeah, restart and upgrade, and let's reboot, and it's going to boot us into the new image. So I want to show you here while it's booting up. If you hold down or mash the left shift key, I'm going to mash it because holding it down doesn't always work, you get the grub menu. Now the grub menu, you can see, has different versions, the different images that are on the system. So you have the old one and the new one. This is the old one, that's the new one. Not sure why it shows up twice, but this is the one that we're booting into. Had I not hit shift, this is what it would go into automatically. But if it didn't boot up, I can go back into the previous one. So let's pretend everything just worked fine, and we're going to boot into it. So I'm back in, I opened the Software Center again, and it's asking to install third-party repositories. Yes, we're going to enable that. And I'm also going to go into add-ons, shell extensions, and I'm going to install the dash to panel. So it took a second for it to pop up there because it's doing stuff, but click on this, install the extension. Here we go. Now once that's done, you can click on extension settings and you can tweak it and customize it how you want without needing GNOME tweaks. Alright, so since I enabled the third-party repositories, it popped up saying that it's now installed and a restart is required to change it to take effect. So yeah, let's do it again. RPM OS tree status. So now you can see our dot is up here instead of down here. Now we can roll back anytime by doing RPM OS tree rollback. Now when you do that, it's going to roll back here and it's going to tell you again that you have updates. That time you might want to ignore it. You can also do RPM OS tree cleanup -p, and this will remove any pending updates that are above you in the little dot. It'll get rid of it. So now before going on to Flatpaks, there's something else I want to cover, and it's if you can't install in Flatpak and you don't want to use a toolbox, you can install things in the OS. However, let's do Nano as an example, because for some reason they didn't include it. I don't know why, but you could do sudo rpm OS tree install Nano. Enter in your root password, and then it's going to go in and it's going to update the repos. It's going to pull in Nano, and it's going to install it as a package layer. Now, don't do this unless you really have to, because it takes a while and it's not as quick as DNF or Flatpaks or whatever. But again, if you have no choice, you can do it this way. And the downside is you have to reboot. You just have to, because now you're putting a package layer on top of your image, or alongside your image. If you're going to install packages, install them all at once. Don't do one at a time, because you're going to have to reboot in between each one. Now, this is temporary, all this rebooting. There is a way of installing the package without having to reboot. There's a command called ex livefs, and it will just immediately switch you over into the other image, but it's a little glitchy right now. It can cause some issues, and it'll come eventually, but for now, don't install unless you have to. So, as you can see, it's now done. So if we do nano, of course it doesn't work because we have to reboot again. So let's do that. Now, I promise you, you don't have to reboot all the time. You can use Flatpaks and everything. It's just going to be mainly if you have upgrades for the OS, that's when you have to restart. So I've restarted, and now you can see on our current tree, our current layer, under layered packages, we now have nano, which indeed, which indeed works just fine. So like I said, I promise you don't have to reboot all the time, but when you're first setting this up, you might have to. But if you want a rock solid operating system, this is one way to do it. And also this way, I'll do it after, but this is how you can also install Cinnamon, for example. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll do it after just to show you real quick. So next is Flatpaks. Now, yes, this will require one last reboot. I promise you it's the last one. So we're just going to open up a browser. We're going to go to flathub.org. This is going to allow you to have a lot more stuff like Spotify and a bunch of other stuff. So just click on Quick Setup, click on Fedora, click FlatHub repository file, and it's going to open with software install. Let it go, install, enter in your root password, done. So now we just close it. Again, restart. Why? It just kickstarts FlatHub into resynchronizing. Alright, again, still on Flatpaks, open the Software Center, and now when you open stuff, you'll see more options. Let's give it a second. So here we go. So you've got Spotify under audio, you've got under productivity, you'll have more stuff. Once all this stuff's loaded the first time, it doesn't do this every single time, I promise you. So like mark text, sure, let's install that. If you scroll down here, you can see it's sandboxed. That's the install size, the download size. Flatpaks, when you first start downloading the first couple, will be huge because they have their platforms. It's kind of like dependencies to download things. If you've used Flatpak before, you know this. But once you have these common platforms downloaded, the other ones will see that it's already there and it won't download it again. So initially, the first few will be large downloads, but don't worry about it. Just get it over with, and it's much better because they run sandboxed in their own little environment. I find there's very, very little, if any, performance difference. There's no delay in starting them up. It's just the installation. Speaking of the installation, if you're using the GNOME Software Center to install, especially these first few large ones, you'll see installing 0%, like as if nothing's going on, but it is downloading stuff. Let's see here, 4 megabits per second, 6 megabits per second. So this is something that they'll probably fix in future versions. If you don't like this, then you can use the terminal as well. It's just Flatpak install. I'll do one just to show you guys, and then you can actually see what's happening instead of just staring at installing 0%. All right, so that's done. It took a little bit. Another thing you might see is that progress bar jump up and down a little bit. It's a little strange, but it's fine. So let's do that in the terminal now. So we're going to make this larger and visible, and it's as easy as Flatpak install Spotify. It found it. Use this. Yes. Use this. Yes. Now it's going to show you everything that it's going to download. Yes. Now, that's not too bad. It's only downloading 127 megs because it used some things that Mark Text also uses, which is convenient. If you install Spotify first by itself, you're going to see a bunch of other downloads that are a couple hundred megs. So that's done, and now we can go into here and we can see Mark Text is here. I find this one, I've installed this before, I find this one starts a little slow, but it starts a little slow as a package as well. So, Spotify, and remember, this is an old computer. So Spotify works fine, everything works fine. I've tested sound, it works fine, and that's it. So that's Flatpaks, and as I've said before, it's nice to have the Flatpaks completely separate from the OS like this, because no matter what upgrades or downgrades or rollbacks that you do, your Flatpaks don't touch anything. They're not touched, and they don't touch anything. So no matter what you install in one, it doesn't affect the other, which is really nice. Now the last thing, the second last thing, because I'll also install another desktop to show you guys, is the toolboxes. So the toolboxes are a little environment that you can use to develop things, but you can also use them just to play with containers. They're containers. So we'll do, I'll just get into it here. Toolbox create container to give it a name, and I'll just call it Fed30. This is just giving it a name. So I'll go Fed30. It wants to download this 500 meg image. Yes. And it's going to download it. It's going to set it up, and then we'll have this little toolbox that we can play in. All right, so that's done, and it even tells you here, enter with toolbox, enter container, and the name that you gave it. Now you can go Fed.1, give it a different name. Because I already downloaded that image for Fedora 30, which is the default, it just created another one. You don't have to download the image again. So if you go toolbox list, now you'll be able to see Fed30, Fed30.1. It created two, which is weird. Not sure why it created two. Let me just try that again. It seems to have created two. That could be some kind of a glitch because they have the same container ID. Maybe using a decimal is a bad idea for the name. So now we can just do toolbox, enter, C, Fed30. You can do the -C, or you could do -- container C. It's the same thing. So now you can see there's a little purple diamond or hexagon, octagon, whatever you want to call it, shape. Here, this tells you that you're in the toolbox. Also, the name toolbox here kind of gives it away. Now, in this toolbox, you can do whatever you want. But unlike being in Silverblue outside of the toolbox, where you'd use RPM OS tree to install things, here you can actually use DNF to install things, just like on Fedora. So DNF install, let's do neofetch and mousepad. Now you can see that it didn't ask me for a root password because this is a rootless environment. You do still have to enter sudo, but it's not going to prompt you for a password. So I'll just let this finish. Alright, so that's all installed into the toolbox. So now we could do neofetch, and you can see that it ports itself as being in a Fedora 30 container image. Mousepad. You can see it launched the GTK application. So that is pretty cool. And not only that, but if I write some text, save as, documents, some files, file, save that there. Now if I open Nautilus, go to my documents, it's here because the home folder is shared between the toolbox and the host. Now if you're doing development on multiple versions because you want to play with stuff, play with versions, make sure your stuff works on various versions, you can go toolbox, create, container, call it fed29, and we'll do release 29. And then it's going to download a container image for Fedora 29. So now it's created the container. Let's just clear this and do toolbox list. And we still have the 2 for some reason. Might be a bug that I think I'm going to report. And we have fed29. So you do toolbox, enter container, fed29, and now you're in a Fedora 29 container. So that is pretty cool. So the way that these 3 components work together really works. If you're not a developer and you just want to use it as a regular workstation, I don't see why you can't. I mean, it has Firefox, it has all the shell extensions, it has whatever you want. And if you're really, really not a GNOME fan, I haven't checked to see what all is available for desktops, but if you're okay with Cinnamon, which is one of my new favorite things, you can install it. And of course, you're gonna have to reboot, but I would recommend rebooting anyways if you install a new desktop environment. You can log out and log in, but better to play it safe. All right, so this is almost done, and I wanted to mention also regarding installing things on things. If you're installing this on a system that has NVIDIA and you really want the drivers, they do have the drivers. There's instructions online on how to do it, but it is a little bit sketchy right now. People have had successes, and some people said that updating it breaks it and it's difficult to update, but it's something that is definitely in the works. Restart again, click on the little gear here, and we have Cinnamon. Log in, and we should be presented with the Cinnamon desktop. And if you can actually do this and try it out and then see what happens. I haven't checked to see. I know Plasma isn't on there, but maybe Mate is, or Budgie. I don't know. Honestly, all I've tried is Cinnamon. You can give it a shot and see if it works. This works for me. I installed it before, and I ran it with Cinnamon for a while, and it worked great. If you install something and a new desktop environment and it doesn't really work out properly, remember you can always roll back. So we could do the RPM OS tree status, because we're dealing with OS tree. This is not a Flatpak or toolbox or anything. And you could see here, layered packages, Cinnamon. And on the previous package, no Cinnamon. So we could do RPM OS tree rollback. And then this will point the boot up through grub to point back to our old image layer, which is this one that did not have Cinnamon. So you can see here, it tells you removed all of this. And then if we do a RPM OS tree status, it's saying that we're now going to be on this one. Or no, sorry. We are on this one with Cinnamon, and it's bumped that layer that was on the bottom is bumped it to the top without Cinnamon. So when you reboot, you're going to end up here. So it's easy as that. And then there's things like cleanup as well. So let's say I did that, or I boot into my system and I see this up here and I don't want it, or I changed my mind. You could do RPM OS tree cleanup -p for pending. So do this, and it's going to go through. It's going to see this pending one that we do not want anymore because you changed your mind at the last minute, or maybe it's an update that you know is going to break. So basically just wait until the next update when it's going to fix it. Done. So if we run status again, now you can see we have just this one. Now, if you restart, this image should be at the bottom again. So yeah, that's it. I hope this wasn't too long, but I mean, honestly, there's a lot to cover. Do you want to use it as a regular workstation? You definitely could. There's every reason for it to be stable, and if for some reason something happens, you can just roll it back. So that's OS tree. That's Silverblue with Flatpaks toolboxes. So this is like the ultimate atomic container operating system, Linux distro. And it's pretty cool. I'm going to use it for a while. I might do an update down the road because I'll probably keep it. And I might put it on my production machine because it does have OBS. It does have Kdenlive. It has all the tools that I use. So I can give it a shot and try it with NVIDIA drivers and just go from there and see what happens. So hopefully you guys found this informative, and if you want to try it, please give it a try. Let me know what you think. If it's too much, I mean, there's a lot of documentation. I just kind of gave you the Cole's notes and tried to give you a run through of how it works, the basics, to anyways get you up and going and get you on a desktop and to be able to do what you need to do. And hopefully it comes in handy, or maybe you just found it interesting. I don't know. Put something down in the comments. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to share it. Share it around and spread it to all your friends on your social media. Anyways, that's all I got for now, guys. I'd like to thank my past, present, and future patrons for helping me support the Linux community by supporting me. If you'd like to contribute, head on over to patreon.com/dorian.slash. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Until next time, bash on.